Okay, so as I said, I think this meeting will be especially useful for those who are looking for volunteering opportunities within the EA landscape and who is interested, like, yeah, to learn how to get involved. So I will share my screen. And you will have opportunity to ask questions after each of the presentations, after each of the, like, for each speaker. So yeah, so I volunteered for the OLFET in 2020, and I want to explore, like, kind of reflect a bit on my experience and kind of, yeah, reflect on, like, more kind of broad question of, like, why volunteering might be valuable for you, and share my experience with OLFET. So as I said, like, OLFET is a, like, well-known EA organization, alliance to feed the Earth in disaster, and their kind of mission is to work on food security, like, and especially, like, explore like, yeah, food security in case of emergency disasters like nuclear winter or like super volcanoes eruption or something like that. So yeah, and their mission is like to find ways to feed the whole Earth population in case of this kind of disasters. And my role was to explore Soviet programs on some, like, krill fishing and in general, like, Soviet programs on disaster preparedness, because originally I'm from Russia, so I'm kind of, yeah, Russian is my kind of native language, and yeah, I could kind of explore all the academic papers that were written somewhere like between 50s and 80s on these kind of questions during the Cold War, especially. And my goal for this volunteering was to become better in, like, as a researcher, and also, like, learn best practice from a, like, well-known established organization, and to broaden my professional network. But actually, I think, like, the most value came not from where I expected, and like, I will come to this, like, in a minute. So yeah, usually like with the OLFET, usually volunteers can choose a topic from a kind of huge list of concrete projects they can work on. And if you're interested in volunteering for the OLFET, they have different opportunities for volunteering, like across all the areas, like research or communications, operations, resilience building, and so on. So yeah, and usually before joining the team, you would be provided with a, like, small tester task, maybe like for like up to like 3-5 hours, something like that. So yeah, even like volunteering within the EA community is kind of competitive. Yeah, but like, yeah, I think like it's kind of different just because it's a skilled volunteering, and yeah, that's why a lot of organizations are kind of asking to do at least like some kind of tester task. And as I said, like, I worked as a researcher, so I was kind of attached to a senior researcher who is working full-time for the organization, and he was supervising my work. And we had weekly calls with him, and also we had like weekly calls with the research team where we kind of supported each other and, yeah, discussed the topics we were working on. And yeah, for this specific volunteering, I spent maybe like from 10 to 20 hours, and it's kind of a huge commitment. I think your volunteering involvement can start up from like 3 hours per week, like depending on the organization you are applying for. Yeah, and yeah, so the next slide. Why you should consider skilled volunteering. And here, like, I want to share my personal experience, but also kind of reflect on a bigger picture, why it might be useful. So one thing that was important for me actually was like a language practice, because as I said, like, I'm not native speaker, and it was the first time I ever did some like part-time, almost like a part-time job, completely in English within like an English-speaking team. And it was kind of important for me to become confident in this, to apply for the roles like within other organizations, like to apply for some remote work. So it was valuable from this kind of point. Yeah, it's also like just very interesting to explore different cultures. For example, with the All-Fetch, all the team is working remotely from different parts of the world. And yeah, there is such a diversity among the team, like in terms of like, yeah, like ethnical background and cultural background. So it's kind of really interesting. So of course, you will improve your skills, but you will also improve your skills in some ways you might not expect. So I was working on a research team, and yeah, like, it's obviously that I spent a lot of time like writing some reports, but I also became better at kind of tracking my time. For example, something that I'm still using as almost as a habit, like I'm tracking how much time I spent on each project, and I actually learned it from the All-Fed, because they have this kind of optional feature that, like, for volunteers, if you want, they can kind of provide you with a Toggle account, and you can like track your time. It's kind of just valuable feedback for the team. And I also got better with managing volunteers, just because I was exposed to like how you can run a successful group of volunteers within the established organization without like spending too much time on overseeing their work. So it was kind of useful too. And I didn't expect this at all, like that I will learn these things. Also, like, you will grow your network and make some friends. And like, I'm still in touch with some of the people I worked with, like in All-Fed, and like, you can learn a lot from professional kind of point of view, you can receive some tips and advice that would be suggested by your teammates. And of course, they can like reference you for like, they can be a reference for some like job application in the future if you manage to build good relationships and show yourself as an important member of the team. And actually, as I said, like the value came from something I haven't expected, and it was like the test of like personal fit. So I was almost sure that because I was good at doing some research, that I was sure that I want to pursue this career. But after like really like committing my time and energy, after like almost like 3 months of volunteering for All-Fed, I actually figured out that I'm not enjoying it on a like longer time scale. So I mean, I found something about myself that I didn't know. I learned that I like more kind of diverse, more diversity in tasks. And that's why I decided not to pursue the career like as a like, I don't know, generalist researcher or like independent researcher, and I switched like so I kind of continued my career as a community organizer. And it was like super valuable information for me, and I would be really upset if I would learn this just like on a like having a regular job as a researcher, like because like I think personal fit is one of the kind of major things in terms of like figuring out your career, and it's kind of multiplier for everything else. And yeah, if you are excited about your work, like it's like kind of huge multiplier. And if you are like not enjoying doing it, like yeah, probably it's not sustainable in the long term. So one important thing is that you can actually like increase your odds of getting hired while like by volunteering for some organization. So like one of like kind of one possible way is that you might be like hired for the same like the organization you're volunteering for, because you can kind of show your skills and do some like high quality work, so that the team would be interested in hiring you. And actually, I know that within the all-fed team, it happened kind of multiple times, and it's not a like it's kind of like common thing that organizations are looking for someone they are familiar with. And another thing is that you can kind of, by doing some volunteering, you can signal others like that you are committed, that you kind of have some EA knowledge and so on, like understanding of EA ideas, that you kind of contributed, like if they see in your CV that you contributed to some of the organizations and volunteered, like it's always a good sign, I think. The last thing that I mentioned here is like that you will make an impact. And for me, it was always like just like it feels better when you can contribute directly with your skills rather than like donating to the same organization. And I'm really like grateful for this opportunity to contribute for the all-fed. And despite the actual like research that I've done like on krill fishing was not super successful. So I mean, we got the result, but the result was kind of negative, and we learned that it's not a sustainable way to feed like even like 10% of the world population and cover the need like in proteins, because like krill is very like have a lot of like is a good source of proteins, but it's like very difficult to catch, like to scale all this like fishing thing. But yeah, I'm still like, I think like negative outcome is also like valuable. And sometimes I kind of like to imagine that somewhere like in a distant future, maybe like in hundreds of years, in case of some disaster, there would be like a scientist holding up some papers and running across the lab, like with like Eureka, something like we find a solution, like we can just use krill fishing. So yeah, it's kind of like funny image. I also want to highlight a few things that you should be aware of if you want to sign up as a volunteer for some EA team, EA org. So one thing is that you might kind of overcommit and burn out. And like for me, it was really challenging to kind of do the volunteering while I was also like working full-time on EA Russia community. And that's why I think like I decided to kind of stick with a like not really long time frame for volunteering, like for me it was 3 months, but I think you can just like try to committing just like more for 1 or 2 months if you are doing full-time job to kind of decrease the chance of burning out, just like yeah. And at some point you might feel like less motivated if you don't get paid. I think like maybe if you are doing volunteering for a lot of like for a long time with like long hours, at some point you might feel like, okay, like why I'm contributing the same like amount of work as some like paid organized like paid researchers, like paid team members, but I'm not getting paid. So yeah, that's why I think in general like volunteering is a valuable experience, but you shouldn't consider it as something like to do like as a long-term career, right? So yeah, and one thing that also you should be aware of, if you are doing like if you volunteer with the same skill as your work, as your regular work, it won't count as a like switching off, and it's very different from like just volunteering for, I don't know, like local animal shelter or something like that, because you would actually like the cognitive demand would be like pretty high, and you won't feel like you are switching to doing something different if you use the same skill. So yeah, just like take all of that into account when you're making the decision whether like you want to apply and sign up for volunteering. And I want to highlight multiple resources here. So I will send a link to the link to the slides to the chat. So yeah, some resources that I recommend, like 2 EA forum posts, like one about like why you should consider skilled volunteering, that covers like in more detail all this like different like reasons why you should consider volunteering and what you should be aware of. And if you're especially interested in volunteering for the OLFET, you can look at the case study that was produced, yeah, like on like volunteer research and management at OLFET, if you want to get more kind of details about like how it looks from the inside. And there is a link like join us, like about that covers like what steps you need to take if you want to join OLFET team. Also, I want to highlight a Facebook group that is called like EA Volunteering, and you can find a lot of volunteering and internships there. And yeah, even like I think a lot of them are not kind of publicly promoted, like on, I don't know, like on AJK hours or some like on other resources. So it's kind of more insider view. And yeah, Impact Collabs is also something that you might consider. It's like a platform with a list of many EA aligned projects in multiple areas with multiple kind of roles where you can contribute to. But yeah, sometimes even like big organizations also kind of promote their volunteering opportunities on Impact Collabs, but in general, it's more like independent projects. So if you want to really like skill up faster, maybe I would suggest considering kind of well-established organizations with kind of volunteer with some like structure for volunteering and like overseeing the work and so on. And there is also a kind of a platform on effective animal advocacy website. So they have a page with like skilled volunteering and a lot of links to with a kind of list of different like opportunities if you specifically like considering volunteering for animal charities or some kind of like organizations that are working on factory farming. So that's it with the presentation. And Yeah, I think we have maybe like a couple of minutes on like for your questions, if you have any questions like for me, and then we will go to the next speaker. So yeah, feel free just to you can raise your hand or I mean like you can use the raise hand reaction on Zoom, but you can just like speak from. Okay, George, please go on.
Hi. You shared with us a list of groups that we could find some organizations to volunteer in, but did you ever hear about some, I don't know, like mastermind or like groups for people who want to get into EA or switch careers, but like, I don't know, to mastermind or to call each other and discuss how do you switch? Because like to discuss like the same kind of advice that you gave for example, combining or part-time or some other options that could ease us into doing something impactful.
Yeah, so I can think of like multiple things. Like one thing, you can apply for career advice from 80,000 hours. Like it's free. They have a capacity to provide advice and like at least like they can talk to you and yeah, suggest some resources, maybe like suggest some like connections, like the people who would be valuable for you to speak to. And yeah, so it's like one thing. Another thing is
it's only once in your life, right?
You mean like no, it's not like I think like you can talk to them like multiple times, so you can.
Oh.
So yeah,
that's what I was anxious about. I thought that I should like really prepare, get through all of their materials to just get the most value out of one meeting. Yeah,
I agree that probably you will get them kind of more value if you're already familiar with their key advice series, though, so you don't need to like yeah, just repeat, so they don't need to repeat the same things. Okay. Yeah, another thing that I can think of is EA virtual programs. So have you heard of it? So it's like a virtual fellowships with introductory and in-depth courses, but it's not like what I'm exactly pointing to, because like virtual programs is a good way to learn more about EA and like EA concepts, but on EA virtual programs Slack, they have a channel that is called Study Buddy. And I think a lot of people kind of formed kind of mastermind groups from like with their kind of with other participants of this like Slack workspace. So if you're interested in kind of creating a mastermind group of like 4 or 5 people who are like pursuing the same goals as you, I think this is this might be a good place.
Did you say it's a Slack?
Yeah, I will send all the links. Yeah, I will send all the links to the chat. Yeah, and like the third option is you can just like schedule a talk with me later, and we can, because I'm running some. So yeah, I'm not as competent with the kind of providing a career advice as 80K hours. But I'm trying to facilitate people with relevant knowledge and like facilitate valuable connections and like suggest some resources and so on. So that's something that I can do. And like in general, like I help people to navigate through the EA landscape. So yeah, that's something that might be valuable. So I will send all the links to the chat.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Just to add on to George's question, you can have multiple consultations with your advisor. So I applied for it in like January, and I did 1 session, and then after I requested for a follow-up session 4 weeks later. And recently my career has like kind of changed, so I did request for one again. So he did say that I can either reapply, which is going through the whole process for another session, or you can also just, list out like a simple document and then ask your advisor whether they are able to like give you comments on it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, George. Thanks, Dion. And yeah, maybe we have time for one more question. Okay, yeah, like also feel free to use the chat if you have something, yeah, if you want to ask something. And yeah, I think we are ready to go to our next speaker. So speaking of virtual programs, I know like, yeah, so John like is a experienced facilitator for EA virtual programs, and yeah, please go ahead and yeah, feel free to share any other kind of relevant knowledge that you feel might be useful for, yeah, for people looking.
Is it okay if you enable screen sharing for participants?
Yeah. Okay, so now you can screen share.
Yeah, I don't have as many slides as Alex because this was prepared like during his talk, because I realized that it looks better with like slides. But following on to what we said earlier with 80K, so one of the things that my advisor told me was that it was really important that when you start volunteering, you should know exactly what you're volunteering for. Because in the past for me, it was just, there's like so many exciting things to do. And I was just like, okay, I'll go and do it. And like, I would have a lot of fun. But like Alex said, it's like very easy to get burnt out. So these are like the 3 broad categories of like why I've started volunteering in the different roles that I have. So I know we are supposed to be talking about virtual programs, but I'm actually not starting off with that. So I'll start off with another one first and I'll get back to it. So one of the places that I'm currently volunteering with is called the Pandemic Prevention Network. So I started volunteering with them mostly because of career capital. So as a very new startup, they didn't have funds to like pay other people. So when I joined in, I was working for free, but at the same time, I was getting experience that I couldn't have had in another organization. Because they were so new, I was able to be involved in the creation of the logo, creation of name, and like the branding. And I was able to take on like a more managerial position that I otherwise wouldn't have had because I just graduated last year. So this was extremely important in how I build up experience. And then also because like of how the EA community works, you are able to like build connections because you can find mentors, you can look for people who can like guide you on what to do. And it's a lot easier when you're already currently working on something and you can be like, hey, like this is the organization I work for, and like, can you like give me help with this? And like, in line with that is like, you can build a portfolio. So in future, you can be like, hey, like this is what I've done. Like, and of course you can also get like references. You can be like, oh, like, I've done this for the organization, they can like support me. And I think this is more relevant if you're getting into the EA community, because I do find that like EA communities are like kind of linked together. So getting that kind of experience of backing in an EA organization helps you to assimilate better into a full-time position. So I think another thing is like getting onto like companies' radar. So Alex kind of mentioned this. So for example, the logo that I designed, the website that I've been used was actually featured during AAG London. And then after, when other people noticed it, they were like, hey, like, like who did this? And like, then they'll contact me. And I think that's like one of the things that you can do. So for example, like if you've done like a research project and you're involved in it, in the future, if anyone has like plans for any similar projects or like, or they want to use your research or like the impact, they can like always get close, like connected with you and like talk to you about how you achieve that. So yeah, so that's like the first thing. The second thing is for interest. So this is what I'm doing with the virtual programs. Okay, I do need to like give a disclaimer though, because recently the virtual program started giving out a stipend for highly rated facilitators. And I am like kind of getting paid for volunteering. But in the past, I was doing it for free. So just making that disclaimer in case like there's like a conflict of interest. But I think it adds on to like what Alex said before. I think in general, the AA community has been very willing to, reimburse people or pay people for like their hard work and their skills. So if you do really well at your volunteering, it is likely that you'll be recognized and, given either a stipend or a pay. So I did the virtual programs because I think it's really interesting. Because after being in the AA community for a very long time, it's very easy for you to lose sight of what the community is like as a whole. So in the virtual programs, I get to talk to like a lot of new people. And more importantly, I get to improve myself because with each new group, I get to figure out what EA means to me and how do I best communicate EA with other people. And like with the virtual programs, so for some of you who have not like experienced it before, it's basically an 8-week program that brings you through the different concepts. So for example, expanding your moral circle, long-termism, existential risk, and like, a bit of cost effectiveness. And like, going through each week, I'm able to better explain it each time. And I feel like for me, it's a way of staying grounded because when you get into a community and you get into organizations, it's very easy to get swept up with like all these amazing people who are doing great work. But it's also very important that like, hey, we have new people who are coming in. And like, I think this is where it's really important. I think with virtual programs, it's also very unique because you can really see your impact. So for example, when I started facilitating in September 2020, and I've done around 11 groups with about 11 times 8, about 88 participants-ish. And like, I can really see the impact because like some of my participants have come on to like become facilitators, and I've had like some participants who I saw at EAG London, and I've seen like some of my participants also gone on to work at EA organizations. So it's like, it's like one of the rare times where you can actually see the impact that you're doing and also like, actually make friends. Some of them are people who I've gone out to coffee with, and they have become like people that I can just chat about my uncertainties or like, EA in general. So yeah, that's something that you can do out of interest, and that's what I do. I think another reason for volunteering is really to start projects. So sometimes starting projects can be very scary, right? Like, getting funding and then having to like build a base and trying to like justify what you want to do. So Alex knows this because I recently just asked him whether I could lead like discussion groups for Asia Pacific, because that's something that I think is really important, having more events in different time zones. And like working with him is a lot easier than let's say if I start another Slack channel and like try to get people on. So I think that's something that is a very low bar approach of starting things that you want to explore. This also applies to the virtual programs because, having facilitated for so long, I think it's very important that we have a better guide, we have a better training system for facilitators. And then it's very easy to be like, hey, like, I'm not getting paid. Like, I'm doing this on my own time. Can I create something for you? And like, I think this is also another way of like building your career capital because you're building a portfolio, you're getting people to see like, hey, I'm able to do these kind of things. I have this kind of initiative, right? And then being able to see the impact on like what this leads to. So yeah, this is a much shorter presentation than Alex's, but I think it covered most of like what I wanted to say. So does anyone have like any questions?
Yeah, probably. I just want to ask, like, have you received some kind of training, from the EA virtual programs? Like, do you have any? So yeah, how it looks like the process, like the process, like when you like, kind of sign up as a facilitator, like yeah.
So when you sign up to be a facilitator, okay, the best thing to do is actually do the program before you start to facilitate. And then once you get accepted, you if I'm correct, because it's been a while since I applied, but you do have to go through an interview with Yang. So Yang will ask you like he is like the head of the virtual programs right now. He will ask you certain questions. So for example, like what's your definition of existential risk? And like, if you have someone who is very against long-termism, how will you mitigate it? So he will like throw some questions at you like this. And then afterwards, if he accepts you, there will be a training for facilitators. Okay, so once you become a facilitator, you can also become a trainer. So I've trained people, and basically there's like a meta moderation kind of training where you go through a series of role play scenarios with a group of 4 to 5 other people. And then with that, you will get feedback directly on how you handled the situation. And then also like, working with other people to see how they have their best practices. So I am pushing for like change in like the facilitator training. I think it's very important for facilitators to support each other and to have like more interactions. So I would say on top of the training, almost every single facilitator I've ever like reached out to has been willing to have like a one-on-one to like share how they do their facilitation and things like that. And many of them are also willing to like answer questions in the Slack or like on a one-on-one call. So feel free to like do that as well as part of like getting better.
Yeah, I think for me, it sounds like an amazing opportunity for someone who's considering like starting their own local group, for example, or like becoming a community organizer. So all these kind of skills that you need to build, like a proper deep understanding of ideas, but also like being able to communicate them. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I just want to provide some more like space for questions if someone has any questions. Okay, thank you, John. Like, you're an amazing person. Like, thanks so much for your contribution. Like, we are here not only to share knowledge, but also like to celebrate people who are volunteering their time. So yeah, I feel like it's really nice to have such people around. Yeah, and John is also like, as she said, like she's running as a Asia Pacific discussion group for EA Anywhere, and yeah, I'm really glad that we decided to start this meeting. Like, I was kind of surprised that like from the very beginning, from the very first meeting, we had like plenty of attendees. So yeah, that's cool. So our next speaker is Kasmina, and yeah, so she will share her experience of volunteering for effective thesis and a mental health navigator, and yeah, who knows what else. Okay, Kasmina, please go ahead. Do you need to share slides, or you're good?
I actually do not have slides. Your
That's
presentation
fine.
was really nice. I will have to excuse myself that I am sick. I got the flu at the previous conference in London. Yeah, I'm not sure if I should just share the website that we have for effective thesis, or I'll just keep talking. I have a lot of links that I'll put in the chat. I can start my story with how I found about doing volunteering in EA. I applied for EAG London Virtual in October, and that's where I volunteered for the first time. I got to work a bit with Alex and with other people from EA, and that is also where I found more about effective thesis. I had met the founder, David Janku, at one of the speeches, and I was really interested in the organization because of how well connected with me personally. I wish I had that in my life, and that was my motivation for why I wanted to help them in any way I could. My volunteering with them is not super skilled, I would say. They do have more skilled one for coaches. If anyone is interested in that, I can speak about it. What they offer as services is for early career researchers, so undergrads, master students, and people applying for PhDs. They offer coaching, an opportunities that database, supervisor database, and just connections with other people in EA that would be hard for a person to just search around the internet to find the perfect person. And I found out that they had a new service that they were trying to launch. It was the opportunities service. They now have, we just reached 400 opportunities just a few days ago. So I'm helping just like 80K hours has its job board. We have our little job board for early career researchers. Yeah, so my reasoning was that I liked their cause, and it was meta EA. I could help with not too many hours, so I dedicate around 3 hours per week. I can give less and more, you know, as much as I can. We have 4 volunteers for this specific newsletter, and we're looking for more. But also there's the coaching part that I think is really interesting. And if you either want to just feel that you're super helpful or want to develop these skills, I really suggest, I haven't seen something like this. It seems super valuable for someone who is in EA, who wants to do research and doesn't have the support, the network, especially if you're like a first generation to attend university. This seems like it could change your trajectory. It could help you focus better on a cause area, figure out what sort of resources to look for. Yeah, so when I first applied, I was in a screen call that was super friendly. It was really nice. And that took like half an hour. I spoke with the volunteer leader at the time, and there wasn't like a test task or anything, because for this don't really need, I mean, if you have problems, they can help you. So if you want to do it, you can do it for as long or as little as you want. And I've been doing this for half a year now. It's been really helpful for me to just build my confidence in the EA environment, to meet other people. Like we have met for the first time just a few weeks ago. And I went to my first TAG knowing that there would be someone there that I could connect with. I already knew. So I think it's super valuable to make yourself feel more comfortable and like you belong, rather than you're just an imposter. So if you have that feeling, especially as someone who's coming here for anywhere, if you don't have your own in-person meetings, it feels like you have somewhere to go now. Yeah, I have some notes here that I'm looking at. What else? Oh, how we communicate. Sorry. We used to just use Slack, and we would do our own tasks in our own time. But it just felt like we were not strong enough team. So it's helpful for some people to meet at a specific time, do a bit of work, and then, you know, feel like you have a co-working station. So we've been doing that for 2-3 months now, and it's super helpful for me. So we have one day, like 1-2 hours when we meet, and we do that. We also get our own personal email with effective thesis, what's it called, name. So I can also leave it here if you want to contact me, and I don't know, with any questions or anything you can think outside of this. I just sent it. Also, I will send right now a few links for you to look at while I continue speaking about this and other opportunities, because I've been volunteering. What I've been doing in EA environment for past half a year or so is volunteering, because I'm not entirely sure what is my cause area or what is my ideal career, and I'm just testing my fate and making connections this way. Another organization, very new organization I've been working with as a volunteer is the EA Mental Health Navigator. I don't have a lot to speak about this yet because I haven't done a lot of volunteering for them, but because I showed my interest, we had half an hour to an hour talk initially, and then I received training through them, just how to act in so I didn't explain what effective the EA Mental Health Navigator is meant to help people who are accessing mental health systems like all over the world. So when you're accessing any service like that, you might not know where to reach to, or there are too many options and it's overwhelming. And what we do, yes, thank you for the link, Alex. So we are untrained, but we are there just to offer help with the services rather than offer any counseling or therapy. But that has been going on for very little because we have to do some more legal requirements before we can do everything that we plan to do. So right now there are a lot of resources that are being built, and we're training internally. One thing that I could say is that this is much more skilled, and you get training, certified training on mental health first aid that is fully paid. So this seems like it's a good fit for you and you want both the training and help other EAs. This is really good shout. Also I've been volunteering at EAGs, and I think that's really, really cool. And if you can help in any way, it's super useful, especially for EAG access. You as a volunteer there makes a whole of a difference, and you can feel that, and that's super meaningful. So it's both that you help them, you feel good about it, and it's also helping you because they will fund you, which is more significant in terms of EAG, like London or San Francisco. From my experience with that, what else can I say? You may get sick if you go there, but it's worth it. It's not COVID. Everything is fine. You get training and you can test your fit with certain roles in operations. I'm unsure whether you can tell fully if you fit within operations or not, because that is much more practical what you're doing then, rather than anything to do with planning way ahead. But you're there and you get to talk with the organizers who can give you much better insight into that. They have very different roles. So if you are planning to volunteer or just curious about it, if you attend an EAG, you can ask about it, or at least look at the options that you have, because, for example, there are like logistics, room management, speaker liaison, and registration. As far as I know, if they don't change anything, these are the main 4 categories, and they're very different. So if you're curious about how you are more in slightly managerial roles, room management and speaker liaison, I think, would be most useful, whereas logistics and registration, whereas they're quite service focused and you do a lot of talking with other people, you don't control as many things in the same way. So, but they're very useful, I would say, and they're a very good addition to your CV and making new connections. If you are new to EA and you attend a conference and you're feeling weird about it, and you're like, what am I going to do there? Who am I going to talk to? Do I have any meetings to attend? I feel like putting yourself available even for just a morning as a volunteer is still very useful. You shouldn't have to feel pressure to volunteer for too many hours. Like Alex said, You shouldn't push yourself to the limit and volunteer more and more. You need to know your limits and test it slowly and find out what your limits are. Especially in a conference, you would think that it's just 2 days. They can be very full. So start out with just maybe half a day, and that's it. I've given my availability as the whole time there, and I felt it, but it's been really fun. Yeah, so let me see if I have any other links. Well, for effective thesis, we are particularly looking for more volunteers for both ICRON, which is our opportunities database, and that is just looking for opportunities wherever you look for. Like, for example, I look for jobs, and it's super easy for me to just look for an extra cause area, and coaches. Yeah. Oh, also, there was another link that I thought about, eawork.club, that I think has volunteering opportunities and work. I'm not sure how updated it is, but I found it in my list of resources. I thought I'd drop it in here. Yeah. If you have any questions, let me know, or feel free to email me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Cosmina. I wanted to ask, I'm not sure that you mentioned like where you learned about like effective thesis and their like volunteering opportunities. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so about effective thesis, especially for volunteering, I think I learned about it in EAG London virtual. So last year we had the virtual version of it where I could just watch the talk, and they mentioned that they had volunteering opportunities. I do, well, let me think about the EA Mental Health Navigator. It might be that I learned about it on a Facebook group. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly which, but it is just about being connected in, I think, the more diverse spaces you have in EA, the more likely you're going to find something that's useful for you. The same with work and volunteering and connections, because it can be overwhelming. For example, I'm not so much on Slack. I know there's a lot happening in there, but it is so much. And then I am connected on just different groups that I check once in a while, and I still could see all the opportunities. Newsletters are very useful. And for example, EA London newsletter, sometimes they just link to different opportunities that are out there, both volunteering and work. Yeah, but if you're actively looking for something, we have these links that are super useful.
Yeah, I think like I learned about my current job from the EA newsletter, and like this position, like it wasn't covered on 80,000 hours at the time. And yeah, and then I asked actually like, I asked a couple of people to be a reference for me, like with whom I worked as like a volunteer or unpaid intern. Okay, so.
Oh, Esther asked if there are opportunities to volunteer remotely within EA. Yes, I didn't mention it. I've only volunteered remotely and only met anyone that I met at EAG, just because we were already working together or I happened to attend. But prior to that, prior to 3 weeks ago, I didn't meet anyone from EA. I would say most opportunities to volunteer and many opportunities to work are remotely.
Yeah, I think almost everything that we covered today was like remote opportunities, because like I talked about like volunteering at AllFed, and it's like the organization itself is based in Canada, but people are working like remotely from all over the world. Yeah, and like EA virtual programs and effective thesis and all of like everything that we mentioned today, it's like, yeah, remote opportunities.
I just want to point out something that if you are volunteering remotely, it's very important to let them know your time zones and to be very clear on your availability. Because I'm normally based in Singapore, and then I volunteered with a UK company, which meant that a lot of the meetings would have been at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. my time. So making it very sure, like making it very clear to them, like, hey, like this is my time zone and this is what I can work with, would be really important if you are doing, volunteering with an overseas organization.
Yeah, like in my experience, it usually like it's not a problem even if you have like, I don't know, like 6-8 hours difference, you still like can schedule a call somewhere like in the overlap of your like working hours. And yeah, maybe it's like it's due to the fact that I was like mostly contributed with the research. Maybe there are like more roles like with some like time sensitive tasks and more kind of, yeah, communication within the team. So that's where it might matter kind of more.
Alternatively, I'm not sure how concrete this is, but you might want to reach out to the group that's in Cape Town, because if I heard correctly, they might be trying to start an intro fellowship soon. So virtual programs that is contextualized to Africa. So that might be more like closer to your time zone.
Yeah, Esther, like I would be happy just like to talk later more like in the end, provide like more suggestions like based on your preferences. But I know like a couple of people from Nigeria who are like also like doing community building in Nigeria, and for example they also they have a program like for students, like an introductory program, but not like a virtual, but a kind of in-person one. And yeah, and maybe you can learn more about like other in-person opportunities to volunteer like from them. So yeah, I can connect you, just like you can leave your email or you can schedule a call with me. So
generally that's just like a really good place to start as well, like getting in touch with your local group, because like sometimes it can be as simple as hosting one of the socials, or like going for one of them and then starting to lead like your interest group. So for example, if you're interested in AI, you could offer to like lead some of the discussions for your local group. And I think normally they will also have more opportunities for volunteering that might not be widely publicized.
yeah, so does anyone have any like more questions like to our speakers, or just anything related to volunteering in EA landscape? We can also touch internships, because I think like unpaid internships is something that kind of close to volunteering.
Yes, internships would be a very interesting topic, at least for me.
Okay, so just to share, I'm also doing an unpaid internship with Training for Good. So I'm doing a communications internship, and so why I chose to pick up one more volunteering or unpaid role was because Training for Good emphasized that they will be providing mentorship. So that was something that I thought was very important, because I was trying something new and trying to figure out if it's my personal fit and whether or not like what kind of skills do I need to build in order to be like successful at it. So yeah, And then it's been working quite well because Cillian, which is the guy, like the founder of like one of the founders of Training for Good, he's been providing a lot of mentorship. And he's like, so because it's an internship, there's a lot more structure and you are supposed to have more set timing. So for example, with the Pandemic Prevention Network, I can like technically disappear for like 1-2 weeks and it's kind of okay because it's on a kind of like availability kind of schedule. But with an internship, it's more scheduled. So like we have like weekly check-ins and there's like aims that we want to achieve and like there's a more set deadline. Also because like they have like their own goals for the organization that's a little bit different from a volunteer-run organization. So I think also with with internships in general, I think there's a higher possibility of conversion. So with internships, generally, you are filling a role that is extra, like you're supporting them in a way that they have clearly crafted out a need for. So yeah, there's like a lot more structure. So if you're looking for something that you want dedicated mentorship or basically a job in something that you couldn't like apply for or qualify for, then unpaid internships are quite good. But make sure that they are willing to provide you with the mentorship or the aims or objectives that you want.
Yeah, so I think kind of the key difference, as John highlighted, is your kind of level of commitment. So like while I was volunteering for the Old Fed, I wasn't expected to be really committed to like working, for example, it was my personal choice that I decided to commit with like 10 or like 20 hours, but usually with like internships, it's just like you are choosing that you're like, okay, like I'm committing 20 hours like a week, and you can't just like say like, oh, I have a busy week, I have a lot of work, and I can't can't contribute with this amount of time because you're already committed. And the communication with the team is usually like more more engaged, and you feel yourself more like a part of the team while you are doing internships rather than when you volunteer. I'm just looking for a link for, I think there was some kind of board like a platform with a list of internships like for students. I just like forgot the link, but I will look for it right now.
I just linked the internship board. So I think on the internship board, there's actually an option to apply for funding. So if you are working in a high impact unpaid internship, you might be able to apply for funding to get it subsidized. So just to add on, like another downside of like unpaid internships is that while you get structure, also expect that your application will be a lot more structured. So if you're just volunteering, you might be able to get in without like a proper interview or work trial. But with an internship, you might have to like jump through like a few more hoops in order to get the position.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the link. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so like I'm happy that we also like covered internships at least like a bit. Yeah, but I agree that it's usually kind of more competitive and involves more kind of maybe like doing some interview and a tester task. Yeah, George.
We don't have a next I don't know, speakers scheduled, then I'd have a question that I have a plan that I could run by you if you don't mind.
So sorry, what kind of, yeah, like I would say like yeah, we've done with talks for today, but we can just like continue discussion while we have some questions from the audience. So
I'm definitely going to check out all of the links that I saved, and I saved everything from the chat today. But my plan before that was I met another guy who is trying to figure out how to get into effective altruism and maybe into a researcher's career. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. And volunteering seems like an easy kind of easy way to get more information about everything there. But he also suggested that if there are going to be some grants to be given soon, and if we have a group of like 5 people who want to switch into research and have some similar experience, if we feel that we could tackle some of the propositions that are there or some tasks, that we could apply for a grant and maybe become a team. And I'm just I don't know how to think about that because I never had any experience with research. I'm a software developer, a project manager, but like not with research, not a business analyst or whatever. And I couldn't think of like, how is that supposed to work? What would you? So yeah, my question for you is, what would you say? Like, is this ethical, and what are the chances of us, like, I don't know, not just wasting the grant if we could even possibly get it?
yeah, so my response would be something like that. So usually the grants kind of from EA funds, they are kind of evaluated by pretty like competent people who are aware, like yeah. So like I would say like I do not expect like a high chance of getting a grant with a team of like people who never been really like connected or engaged with the community, and especially without like a strong kind of background with the research. So yeah, probably I would suggest to try some like volunteering or internships first, just even like not because it would allow you kind of to signal your engagement with the community, but just yeah, because it will provide you with the kind of relevant information, updates, and you will also like learn like kind of best tips, best practices from more experienced researchers. So actually like it was my kind of way of thinking, like why I applied for the volunteering at the first time, just because I knew that I want to be a kind of a researcher or like independent researcher, but I knew that kind of I don't have enough skills, and the best way to build these skills is work with a kind of experienced team and learn from them. So I know that a lot of people within the EA community, they are doing kind of independent research, so they do not belong to kind of particular organization or team. They just like apply for grants and do research on their own. And yeah, you can just like look through the list of grants made by EA funds and find this kind of people. But usually they have really like strong experience with the research, and like previously they worked for some orgs, but then they kind of switched to more independent kind of doing independent research. So it's usually works this way. Like you can apply for a grant, like and work as a team, but like as long as you have like relevant experience and a kind of understanding of like what we are doing here, and yeah. So on a kind of it's, I would say like it's more plausible like on later stages of your career rather than like on early stage. I think like working within the team and learning from the team, like it's better.
I wasn't sure what to think about that, and I appreciate the second opinion.
Okay. Okay. Any more questions? All right, then I think